Shabbat Shalom. Rabbi Robert Barr here, and I'm delighted that you're sharing this Shabbat service with me. This is an opportunity for us to pause, to catch our breath, to gain some perspective on where we've been and where we're going. For the days flow into one another without interruption. Time races on. The Sabbath is our means to divert time, a stepping off point, pausing with friends and loved ones to observe, then rejoice in the wonder-filled coincidence of living. There can be a sense of pleasure in every given breath, blessed with taste to savor, and warmth to give and to receive, bestowed with gifts of sight and sound. We are obliged to cherish and revel in each smile, in every musical note. The Sabbath also awakens us to the silence between notes. It speaks of contemplation, the quiet delight of literature, of unhurried walks, of rare conversation. The Sabbath can be our interlude, our ritual pause in this lively current, our signal to step more lightly, to appreciate more profoundly, to dive more deeply into the questions that life is asking. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam, our bricks and mortar congregation, and our Jewish community, our online congregation. And while we've been streaming services online for over 10 years, given the pandemic that we all face, our online congregation has taken on new importance. It has allowed us to remain connected even though we are maintaining our physical distance. It gives us an opportunity to know that we're part of a community, something larger than ourselves. I'm delighted you're here wherever you are, whether you're watching live or you're watching in our archives, which many people do. Please let us know where you're participating from and leave notes that are welcoming and inclusive. And while the internet is an important piece of what we're doing, it is only a piece. Congregation Beth Adam came together 40 years ago in order to give voice to a dynamic, bold Judaism. We recognize that we aren't like our ancestors. History, science, new information has informed who we are and our understanding of what it means to be a human being who evolved out of nature, who now lives in a universe that we know is 14.5 billion years old. Our ancestors couldn't have conceived of that. They couldn't conceive that we would be online, and they couldn't have conceived of the universe that we live in or the natural world which we know. So while they give voice to who they were, it's incumbent for us to do the same. That's why our liturgy here is different. A liturgy that speaks about human responsibility, that ethics and morality arise out of the human experience we created, and it continues to evolve as we have new information. About a sense that we aren't going to be rescued by some divine hand, but we, human beings, if we don't like what we're seeing, if we don't like the trajectory of the world, whether it's global climate change or prejudice, it is incumbent upon us to work to change our world. That's what we give voice to here at Congregation Beth Adam and our Jewish community. And I'm delighted that you're part of it with me, sharing this service together. We're going to continue our service with the candle lighting. Perhaps you have some candles at home. You want to light them with me, or you can listen and watch as I do this. The candles of Shabbat stand before us, waiting to meet the flame, longing to share their warmth, ready to shed their light. Like those who came before us, like all people, we find comfort and fear in flame, endless swirl of fascination, mystery and awe. Like those who came before us, like all people, we are graced with the desire and the will to understand. So we continue our ancestors' search for answers, pushing away the darkness of ignorance. The flames they saw as magic and beyond comprehension became flames of knowledge and hope. But still we look with wonder, inspired by their beauty and power. We embrace the flames of Shabbat. We embrace the light, our vessel of mystery and understanding. As we light our Shabbat candles, we celebrate our journey, our quest, our moments of peace. May the light of our people shine. May the light of Shabbat cast its warmth in our homes. May these candles burn with respect for all who push beyond the bonds of ignorance, for all who seek justice, for all who build community. May these candles burn with memory of all who came before us. May we draw on the many ways our ancestors have given voice to their values and ideas. May we add our own insight to the glow. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. A few weeks ago, I had a conversation with one of my former study partners, Rabbi Jeffrey Cahn, about his journey from being a student here at Hebrew Union College. Well, actually, we met in Israel, and when we first met, studied here in Cincinnati, and how he went from being a pulpit rabbi to ultimately owning the medical marijuana shop in Washington, D.C. in Tacoma Park. This is the second part of our conversation. I asked him what it's like to own the medical marijuana shop. What does he do? How does it work? It was a world that I didn't know anything about, and he was kind and generous with his time and shared his experiences with us. So it's my pleasure again to welcome Rabbi Jeffrey Cahn to our Jewish community at Congregation Beth Adam for a conversation. Now, this is our second conversation. If you didn't see the first, you might want to go back and hear about the history that led him to opening with his wife Stephanie the medical marijuana shop in Tacoma Park. It's in Washington, D.C., right? Tacoma Park borders, it straddles it, doesn't it?
Exactly. We're in the Tacoma neighborhood of Washington, D.C., right across the border from Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Okay, so you're celebrating an anniversary. You've been there how long now?
This summer it'll be 7 years since we've opened.
Wow.
10 years in the process. It took about 3 years before we actually got to open the doors.
So 10 years. Take us back, because the world. I mean, I think but you're a rabbi doing it. We talked really about how you're concerned about people and you're concerned to relieve suffering. And Stephanie, your wife, is a nurse. It led you to this place. But how does a rabbi? I mean, and you were living in Israel. How did you even begin to figure out how to open up a medical marijuana dispensary when the laws were still there was laws against it? How did it work? How did you even come up with it? And what were people saying when you walked in and you went, "Yes, I'm a rabbi"? It's not just a title. That's really what I've been doing. So what was that 10 years ago?
Well, it was certainly very, very different 10 years ago. Most people had a negative impression of cannabis, of marijuana. Most people, at least here in Washington, if they knew somebody that had any experience with cannabis, it was probably that it was a negative experience. Mm-hmm. And a negative experience because they were arrested, they were incarcerated, they were fired, not because they actually used cannabis and it made them sick, but because they had a negative experience having to do with the law. Today, by the way, it's quite different. Most people don't have that kind of negative experience, but in fact know somebody who's actually been helped by cannabis. But back then, it was quite different. As I mentioned before, we happened to be here in Washington, D.C. at a time when a law that had been passed 12 years earlier was allowed to be put into effect. And because of the experience that we had with my father-in-law, because Stephanie is a nurse and also was very involved in compliance issues and standards and regulatory compliance, she's telling me.
You're being coached. Well, it's not a question. When you were giving sermons, was Stephanie sitting on the side of the beam and coaching you as well?
So I called a family meeting. We all sat down together and I said, I think this is something that we could do. And by the end of the conversation, everybody agreed. I don't know if they were all into it at the beginning, but by the end, they all agreed that this is something that we could do in memory of my in-laws, that we could probably do it successfully. We could probably get a license. but it was all so unknown and all kind of untried or uncharted territories. We had the first thing I had to do, well, I mean, I guess not the first thing, but we had to be involved in writing a proposal for the license that actually was far more complicated and far larger than my rabbinic thesis.
Really? I remember
yes.
the Jews of Cuba, right?
Yes.
The Jews of Cuba. I remember. I don't know why. There's things at moments. They're like memories that are weird, but I remember that.
Yes. Well,
it was bigger than the thesis, and it was in English mostly, right?
Yes. Yes. Although in lots of things that I didn't understand, but you know, in lots of ways, the way that we've gotten cannabis as legal as it's become is by being very much into taxation and regulation. It's something that the government likes. They like things regulated and highly taxed, and we've sort of been like, regulate us as much as you want, tax us as much as you want, just make us legal. So we're so highly regulated that it's very complicated to run, because because although we do things that are legal locally, they're illegal federally, and we happen to also be in the seat of the federal government. That makes it quite complicated too, it's not a business that runs easily.
It took you 3 years to set up.
Sorry.
It took you 3 years to set it up. It wasn't like you said, "Oh, we're gonna." You didn't go out and buy a franchise. You spent 3 years doing all the regulatory work, the preparation to get it.
And as the regs were being written and trying to influence them, and we had to work a long time in our neighborhood, and our neighborhood, and we live in it, appreciates us, and many of our patients, most of our patients actually come from our neighborhood. But in the beginning, we had many neighbors who opposed us being there and had. It's even after prohibition of alcohol in the 30s, when prohibition was repealed, people knew a little bit what to expect. It hadn't been so long since there had been bars or alcohol served in restaurants, but nobody knew what to expect from this or what it would be like. And the fact that it's so different from community to community makes it more complicated and more difficult.
So I have a vague recollection, you did some testifying too. You advocated. So I mean, as a rabbi who had been a public speaker who was used to being in front of crowds and giving impassioned and persuasive speeches, you were a great advocate, because I'm guessing when you walked in, you were disarming. I mean, the two of you and Stephanie, a rabbi and a nurse walking in who had already had a successful career. You were 25 years as a pulpit rabbi, and then lived in New York or in Israel for a time. That when you came in and presented, you had to be disarming. You weren't what people were expecting, I'm guessing.
No, and I think that's has been key to a lot of things, not just in the beginning, but all along. We've had to work really closely with our government and our council and our mayor to be able to expand the program and be able to make it livable and workable, because the original program as it was conceived wasn't, and we've been constantly working to make it better. And one of the reasons why they work with us and work closely with us is because they do take us seriously, and that they know that we're really doing something that's there for the good and not just our own personal benefit.
So you 3 years set up, then you open your doors, and now you've been doing it 7 years. So what's it like having, I know what it's like to run a congregation. I know what it's like to lead services. What's it like to, what's your, I guess, two questions. What's your typical customer, client? What term do you refer to people who come and purchase from you? Clients or?
Patients.
Patients, okay. So what's the typical patient profile, if there is a typical one? And what's it like to be be the head of it? You've been the head of a congregation, now you're head of, so patient, and then your typical day or your typical experience.
Sure. Well, our patients are pretty much, a broad cross section of humanity. We have infants to people in their 90s. We have pretty much equal amounts of both genders, and then people who don't identify as a gender. We have just about everybody you can imagine as far as their background. We in the beginning, a lot of things have changed in our program. One of the things was that there were only 5 conditions for which a physician could write a recommendation for. And now, and for many years, it could be any reason why a physician thinks that cannabis could be able to help. In the beginning, our 5 conditions were pretty much diseases like cancer or AIDS. But since that was taken away, most of our people come to us because they're dealing with chronic pain. And that seems to be, as we know from the opioid crisis, one of the key things in America that when we weren't dealing with the pandemic was probably our chief medical issue, and no doubt will be again. And so Americans trying to deal with pain, and when it no longer was just a disease, then we started seeing lots of people who had survived automobile accidents or gunshot wounds or other forms of violence, or all kinds of things that people are living with pain about, and didn't have a way and don't have a really. I mean, there's very little between take 2 aspirin and becoming an opioid addict. There's very little in between to be able to help people, and cannabis is one thing that does.
And for those of us who don't know, or who don't have a lot of experience, you have a range of products. It's not, I mean, sort of the image of smoking the joint, the marijuana cigarette. I mean, that's not what you just sell.
No. So we have, you say a variety of products and in different forms. And one of the things that we have to work closely with people is to find what it is that's actually going to help them, not just the right strain, but the right form of medication for them. And so some people do actually smoke the cannabis, and that's, we know because of the smoking of tobacco that we've kind of like been indoctrinated with the evils of smoking, and certainly there are evils of smoking, but it's also a very fast way to be able to get something into the bloodstream. And so there are benefits to smoking, but we also work with people in using all kinds of other ways of ingestion, edibles, creams, lozenges, suppositories, just about any other way to be able to tinctures. And
not everything gets people high. That's the other.
And not everything gets people high, and that's not what a lot of people are looking for. And so there are hundreds, probably, of cannabinoids that we haven't even identified all of them, but we've identified over 100 that are in the cannabis plant. So little research has really been done yet, and most of all the research that has been done has come from Israel, because we can't do any research here in this country, even still.
So Israel's ahead of us in this area?
I'm sorry?
Israel's ahead of us in research?
Way ahead of us. So a real quick story is that in 1962, a young biologist at Hebrew University read about the police confiscating Lebanese hash in Bnei Brak, and he went to the police station and he said, "I'm from Hebrew University. We want to study this," because he said to himself, "What is it? And how does it work?" Because nobody knows.
Really?
Yeah. And so back then, he went home on the bus with this bag of hash and began to study at Hebrew University, which is the center of the world. In Jerusalem, they discovered CBD in 1963, THC, the major cannabinoid, in 1964. And today, Israel has a really robust medical marijuana program. The guy that's been running it, who's just going out now to get another corrupt position, Litzman, the Minister of Health, is Ger Chassid, a Haredi guy who...
For those who don't know those terms, ultra-Orthodox.
orthodox, but no problems with cannabis as medicine because there's no problem in Judaism with cannabis as medicine. I mean,
so do you speak? So do you ever speak on sort of the halachic, the Jewish law and cannabis? Is that a role?
There's a lot of work done in it, and it's all like
That's so
taken as a matter of fact that sure, it's just like any other medicine that's known to help. It is.
So you have this really interesting intersection as a rabbi who's lived in Israel, who's fluent in Hebrew. So you play and has a medical marijuana, owns a medical marijuana shop with your family. I mean, you have this very interesting sort of history and connections. Wow. And then, so the patient's range of things, you're working with them. I know Stephanie will work with them as well to help them figure out what will help them feel the best dealing with pain.
Exactly, and it's a lot of trying and starting low and slow with different things and trying to find the right thing that works. And so it's a lot of trial and error at first. Unfortunately, we don't know enough about it for physicians to be able to prescribe it like they prescribe any other medication.
Right.
If a physician could say, you should use this, so many grams of this strain so many times a day, and that's what's going to help you, like they can with other kind of medications, that would be great. But basically, a medical marijuana recommendation is to say, if we looked at it in the pharmaceutical world, it would be like the physician writing you a paper saying, I give you permission to use pills. Now you go down to the drugstore and figure out what's going to help you. And so we're kind of like the drugstore, helping them figure out what's going to help them because the doctor only told them they could use pills.
That's so interesting. That's an interesting analogy. And so it's grown, and so you have to manage it. There must be a lot of just compliance and protection. I mean, how does it?
We're under monthly. Everything is online, and so everything is completely. Everything that we do is monitored from seed to sale. So from the time a seed sprouts, it gets an RFD code tag, and that number stays with everything that's produced from that plant until the end. We know exactly when it started and who walked away with the finished product when it was all over. And the district, the health department, and the police are constantly checking that. They also come once a month to do a complete check-in of us and inspect everything.
Are you more regulated than a pharmacy at this point? It feels like you're like.
It feels like it sometimes.
I didn't realize
it's more complicated to me than a pharmacy, and they haven't quite figured that out. So because we sell plant material, it's not the same as just, say, tablets. So when they inspect a pharmacy, they count tablets. When they inspect us, they weigh dead plants. And it depends on the temperature, the humidity, whether we have heat on or air conditioning, or all those things could affect by even a tiny little bit the weight. And then it's, well, where did that go? And
sure. And then you're living in this bizarre world of state law versus federal law as well. And because you're in the District of Columbia, which is
yeah, so we're not in the state. So, but we've got our district law, which is sort of like state law, but then we've got the federal government right here, and an administration that doesn't really give us any kind of direction as to what to expect from them next. At least with the last administration, we had some kind of direction from them, which we got nothing.
So I got to ask you this question. It's fascinating that you're doing this. It's impressive, and it makes sense. You're having been in the rabbinate, continuing trying to help people deal with pain, live better lives. Do you miss the pulpit at all? Do you miss being I don't know if I'm asking for but I'm asking for me. This is sometimes you ask questions. You don't know who you're asking it for, but I'm just sort of curious. I mean, giving the sermon, doing life cycle events. Have you ever? Do you miss that at all, or you say that was part of my life? I'm now into a whole new area that I'm enjoying and finding satisfaction in.
I really do, or I really try to say that this is that was a different part of life, and I really am enjoying what I'm doing. And I get pulled back every once in a while, and a baby naming or somebody that convinces me that my presence really makes a difference to them. But generally, I try and send them to my son.
Well, that's great. I'm so pleased that you're willing to take the time to share with us, talk about us, teach us something that we didn't know. If you're ever if we ever are not sheltering in place again, which I hope will be sooner, and maybe your travels will bring you to Ohio, because yes, we do now have medical marijuana shops in Ohio, and I'm sure people who are watching and participate online, we have people all around the country and in Australia and Brazil and other places as well. I mean, some different countries have different attitudes. If somebody wanted to reach you and had a question, are you willing to share your contact information?
Absolutely. And also for your Ohio and other listeners to know is that we're one of the very few places in the country that accept out-of-state cards. So if folks have a card from another state's medical marijuana program, unfortunately not overseas programs, but any other state or Puerto Rico, we can accept those cards and they can come see us when they're in DC.
Great. And the name of just tell it one more time.
It's Tacoma Wellness Center, Tacoma with a K. That's how we spell it in the East. And I'm Rabbi Cahn at TacomaWellness.com.
Wow, that's so great.
Sorry, just Rabbi at TacomaWellness.com.
You do need those prompts, don't you? There, Stephanie, thank you. I appreciate it. Now, Carrie's never helped me along. So, I have to say, I think that's one of the, having supportive spouses when we're in the rabbin or in any other part of our lives is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it has helped many times. And, as at the beginning, Terry would tell me to cut my sermons, and now she still tells me to cut my sermons. So it's so great. I look forward to seeing you and Stephanie again at some point where we can be in closer proximity. And if the opportunity is ever that you're in the greater Cincinnati area, we'd love to host you at Bethlehem. We could do a whole program on Judaism and cannabis.
That would be great. I'll look forward to it. And you guys come stay with us in Washington as soon as we can start traveling again.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Be well. Be safe.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Well, that was a world that I knew nothing about until Rabbi Cahn shared it with me and with you. So I appreciate him taking his time and sharing his expertise and knowledge with us. We continue now with the sharing of the virtual challah. At this moment, we come together to welcome Shabbat. We take pause, breathe in life, and reflect upon the importance of our lives. We feel the touch of the Spirit on the body, the warmth of fellow human beings. We embrace our uniqueness and our diversity, our capacity to create, to explore, to change our world. In sharing the challah, the Sabbath bread, we nourish our spirit, and we are connected with each other and with our ancestors. Baruch Hamal Kapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Ha'adam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Haaretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then if you have some wine or juice, join with me. Life is a wondrous gift. The mind observes with awe, and appreciation flows from the heart. Life's joyful bounties are unveiled. Such treasures abound in ordinary moments. A familiar face, the simplicity of a smile, tender kisses, the warmth and security of a hug, enchanting melodies, the grace of dance, the coolness of sculpted marble, a remarkable story, the complexity of atomic structure, thunder's reverberation, the shimmering of a rainbow, intoxicating rose petals. These moments become opportunities to affirm that which is good. As we lift the cup, a tribute to life's enchantments, may we find joy and contentment in our human endeavors. Bruchim chachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim chachayim ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. And we say, l'chaim, to life. So I'm so pleased you were able to share this Shabbat service with me and with each other and with Rabbi Cahn and with his wife, Stephanie, who we heard in the background every once in a while, offering some assistance. Sometimes rabbis and husbands need that. So we really appreciate him taking his time. I hope you learned from him information that you didn't know. about a world that I knew really very little about. So I'm pleased we were able to share this Shabbat together. Next week will be our memorial service. So once a month, we read the names of deceased loved ones. And given now that that our bricks and mortar services are combined with our online, we read both our bricks and mortar members, deceased members and their loved ones, as well as the names that you send me. So if you have names of deceased loved ones you would like me to read next Shabbat, please email them to me right away. It just makes it easier with the technology. We have to record some of the services a bit earlier. So if you can send me the names of your deceased loved ones to rabbi@ourjewishcommunity.org. Please put memorial names in the subject line. That helps me find the names faster. Also, go to bethadam.org. That's where we're all going to now. We've really shut down the Our Jewish Community website. We're trying to put all the information that was there on Bethadam. It'll actually give you more information and let you have more access to what we're doing as we open up more opportunities for both our online and bricks and mortar members to learn and explore together. So I'm delighted you're here. I want to wish you a healthy and stay safe and stay healthy. And we close with the words we close with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. And may the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.